So, hello everyone. We will start our webinar right now. So first, I thank you all for joining us in this important conversation today. It's my pleasure to be hosting this webinar with two fellow product leaders, Tom and Damian. So thank you to be here. We want to make sure that bring valuable insights to you and your companies. So we saved time, a few minutes at the end of this webinar to answer questions from you. Please make sure to drop your questions in your Q&A tab and use the chat function to comment at any time. For those who are having the first contact with Birdie, Rafa, could you pass for the next slide, please? Thank you. A quick intro will help product-centric companies better understand customers at scale to create product strategies that in the end will increase sales. Our collaborative SaaS platform is the only in the market that was built by product managers to product managers and gives product teams the superpower of listening to millions of feedback to prioritize key features, optimize product and positioning, identify trends, and monitor competitors. Founded in 2018 in the US, we currently have a team that is building our technology across 3 continents and serving amazing customers, both in enterprise and medium-sized companies in more than 12 countries. Our founders are seasoned entrepreneurs with previous experience, and we are backed by great VCs and advisors with experience in scaling companies. We will share a special invitation for you today at the end of the webinar, so stick around, please. Now we will stop this presentation, and before I continue, let quickly introduce myself. My name is Alex Spengler. I'm currently head of product here at Birdie. I have been working with software products since 2006. And in the last years, I led product organizations in companies like Hardy Station, Nubank, and Hotmart. I'm also a content producer. I host a podcast and write some blog posts and give some courses about product leadership. To start, I will invite Tom and Damian first. It's a pleasure to have you here, guys. Thank you to make time to have this conversation with us. And to start our conversation, I asked you to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your products, the products that you led today. So Damian, could you start, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for the invitation here. Super excited to be learning and sharing some of my experience as a product manager. I'm from Brazil. My name is Damian Borba. I live in California for almost 15 years now. I worked for a ton of agencies during the Flash time. Like, remember, if you guys remember the Adobe Flash time, probably more than a decade ago. Then I joined the corporate world. I worked for BlackBerry, PayPal, Adobe. I was with Adobe for 6 years. And now I work for Intuit. Intuit is a big company here in the US, building products such as TurboTax, QuickBooks, now MailChimp, and Credit Karma. And I'm the solo PM on the design system team. So I serve all different products and are trying to bring design cohesion, not only in the design side of things in Figma, but also in the implementation via design tokens, a big infrastructure that we have. And our customers are internal designers and internal developers, and very soon also external developers, but mostly internal people. And it's around 2,000 customers across all products. That's me.
Great. It's a pleasure to have you here, Damian. Tom, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. So I'm Tom Laughlin. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But I've lived on Long Island, which is about an hour from New York City. I've lived there for about 10 years now. I have a mechanical engineering background, so I definitely started as a mechanical engineer and I served as a project engineer for mostly hardware development. We were just joking earlier about how I wish I had gotten into the software world, but unfortunately I chose hardware at the time. So I stuck with it. I became a product manager at first with a company called Leviton. I just want to make sure that I might be using examples from the 3 places I've been a product manager. So the first one was Leviton, which is one of the leading electrical manufacturers for electrical wiring devices. So receptacles, things that you plug into. We even made plugs and connectors, things like that. I was the product manager specifically on hospital grade and commercial grade receptacles and GFCIs, which is ground fault circuit interrupters. Those are the things that you plug into in your kitchen and bath. So I started out with that. And then I joined Peloton right before the pandemic, and I was a product manager for the Peloton treadmill for throughout a couple of years of the pandemic. And then I became a director of product at Jetson, which is one of the leading manufacturers of e-bikes and e-scooters specifically for the retail channel. So a number of different industries, but they're all in hardware, and it's been a journey. Looking forward to talking about it.
Congratulations, and it's a pleasure to have you here too, Tom. Before the next question, so for those of you who are watching us, some questions will appear here in Zoom. So if you can understand and know you better, and I will be glad if you can participate. The first question should already be on your screen right now. Just a moment, please. And Tom, starting with you, what do you see as the key differences between physical product management and digital product management? And in your opinion, what a physical PM can learn from a digital PM and vice versa?
Yeah, for sure. So physical product requirement. So look, I don't have a lot of knowledge of the other side, right? Damien will be able to speak to digital a lot more. But from what I guess and what I gather from seeing my peers at Peloton, for example, being in software, physical product management requires you to absolutely get off of your desk chair. So you have to go out into the field. You have to get users on your products or competitor products. You need to figure out, how to create product requirements. Essentially, is getting people to try things and figuring out what they're comfortable with physically, right? You have to observe the users in public. If it's a public-facing product, like e-bikes just happens to be something that you see in public, right? So I could go to a college campus if I wanted to learn more about how college students use e-bikes, or go to a train station to see how people are folding and unfolding their e-bike or e-scooter on and off the train. So it definitely requires you to get out there and observe. I would imagine maybe with software, I won't speak to it too much, but there's probably a lot you can learn from your desk. From a sustaining, that's from a new product development standpoint, right? So I'll break this down. A lot of things that I'll say are new product and sustaining product strategies, right? You have to worry about sustaining products that are already out there in the field. So whenever a customer is, has a problem with their product, it totally helps to be there to try to figure out what is going on, versus a digital product manager where perhaps you can track a lot more behavior and things that are going wrong. Maybe it's a little bit easier to diagnose. And then as far as making improvements to a product, right, you can roll out a software patch, but when it comes to physical hardware improvements, the product is already out there. So you're obviously battling manufacturing challenges. Logistics is probably your number one challenge, but these are all things that like I was joking earlier, why I could totally see why software product is maybe less stressful. I don't know, maybe Damien will tell me differently.
Yeah, I really feel it's a lot easier for sure, especially when it comes down to iteration, right? If you need to add something or change something, but also like I don't think anyone will break an arm or something by using software, right? Like and there's a lot more things to consider when you're like a hardware PM, right? I've never been one, so I don't know the challenges. I'm a user. I had a boosted board in San Francisco and I lived there, that electric skateboard, and I've seen people get hurt pretty bad. And also I have an electric bike now. I take my daughter to school every day, and I cannot even imagine how challenging that is. My wife rides the Peloton all the time here at home. I really like the software in it, but the hardware pieces, it's like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how challenging that is. I'm pretty sure product requirements have to be 50 times more precise, especially with manufacturing, right? You have to make sure it's all there, everything works. And in software, you can discover things that are not connected in production, but I don't think that's the same thing for hardware. You have to make sure everything works before it goes to production, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
I think it's a lot harder.
But I think from a learning standpoint, I had to think about this a little bit, and I'll probably have a one-sided answer, right? I feel like for what a physical product manager like myself can perhaps shed some light on for a digital product manager is what sensing technologies are out there to help digital product managers execute on their features. For example, if we wanted to figure out what is the typical cargo weight that people are towing with their e-bikes or something like that, knowing that there's something called a strain gauge that can help you with firmware determine how heavy people are towing, or even from a GPS standpoint, you can figure out how far people are going with your product. And maybe you made a product requirement that it must go 30 miles, but you're finding out that people are really only going 3 miles. Having that sensing technology can help guide your roadmap and say, hey, we can maybe dumb this down a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. In my view, if I could synthesize, it's more like in software, after you launch something, you work a lot to discover problems and solve these problems. And in hardware, it's way more before you launch anything, how to avoid these problems and work to not have these problems after the launch, because the product's out there.
Yeah, I remember I worked for BlackBerry in 2010, 11, 12, and I remember we had this technology called QNX for cars, and like a lot of the software in cars. And back then, the software had to be ready 5 years before the car was on the streets. So it was like, yeah, how can you iterate on something like that, right? Like that was a long time ago, but it's probably changed. Like with Teslas and everything, you can update the software every night pretty much. But yeah, it was a huge difference, right? I can push, as you said, I can push a patch in hours, right? And in cars, it's totally different.
Yeah, for sure. And going to the next question here, and Damian, starting from you, in your opinion, what are the first steps an organization should take in order to become more customer-centric? So using more customer feedback to improve and building products?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. For software, I've been at many different companies, BlackBerry, PayPal, Adobe. At Adobe, I was able to be part of a team that built something new before product market fit. And at Intuit now, I'm working on products that are post product market fit. So that there's a difference there as well. I think when it comes down to before product market fit, customer feedback is the fuel, right? It has to be the fuel. The last thing you want is to build something that people don't want. So it's really, it has to be part of the culture. So when I was at Adobe, I remember we did this big portal to capture customer feedback. So we were tracking every feedback in one place. People could upvote, people could add details to their feedback. So we as PMs could go to one place and see where the needs were. And at the same time, we were like visiting customers, we were watching them work, because a lot of the things are not very explicit. But yeah, I would say before product market fit, it's the fuel for sure, 100%.
For sure.
Yeah, For me, it's the first step is becoming a user of the product yourself. And you have to immerse yourself in it. And, I was a product manager for concrete floor boxes, which is essentially a box that you would bury in concrete for a building, and you'd plug into it, right? And if you would have seen some of the trainings for the sales team that I would give for them, you would make it seem like I was describing an experience at Disney World. I mean, you have to really have fun with it, and you have to know that you have to be proud of what you're doing, right? So becoming a user yourself. The next would be to get others involved. So one of the first things I did when I joined Jetson was we really didn't have a huge knowledge base of the user because I was creating the product management department from scratch 6 months ago. And I've already roped in, like from the beginning, I roped in team members from the industrial design team, because this is the team that's creating the look of your product, and they absolutely need to know what the use cases of these users. So getting them involved in user interviews. We set up an internal user study for something as simple as if I wanted to set a product requirement for how heavy an e-bike should be, or an e-scooter. You would cast out a company-wide email to your internal team, and you're asking people, hey, we're looking for volunteers to help carry an e-scooter up some stairs, so that we can figure out, for one type of group, they can carry this weight, and for the other group, they can carry that weight, right? So all of a sudden, your company-wide email is now getting everybody talking, and people in like a department like accounting, who have nothing to do with hardware development at all of a sudden talking about it. And that's kind of how I saw a customer-centric company, right? It starts with everybody honestly getting to know what they do. It doesn't mean that you have to be a part of the process. So I definitely like internal employee user studies. That was something at Peloton that I've brought to Jetson from Peloton, something that I observed. So that was really cool. And then, just understanding the user as much as you can, figuring out why are they using the product, getting their delights, their pain points, because that's kind of the foundation that you want. You want to create a library of knowledge, kind of like how industrial designers, who I think, Damien, are probably the equivalent software to UX designers, right? They're designing the page. The industrial designers for hardware are designing the product. They storyboard via sketch or by video the user experience. And I kind of do that as well. I tend to storyboard using like verbatims from user interviews, or user reviews, I should say. So if I see something from like Walmart.com review, I'll jot that down. Like I'll take a screenshot of it and like paste it in a like a vision PowerPoint, where I'm kind of just constantly like going back to it and capturing the user story. So that's kind of the things that I had jotted down in my notes for this question.
And also, like one thing to add there for me is I really feel like really prioritizing customer feedback and really be like customer obsessed makes your job as a PM a lot easier, right? For example, I was presenting a roadmap in a big offsite 2 weeks ago in Mountain View, and one of the engineers was like, but who's asking for this? Like, well, why we're doing this? And I was like, because the customer wants. And I had a ton of data to share about that, and that became like a very easy answer. And who's gonna contest that, right? It's not my opinion, it's what our customers need. It makes it easier to negotiate as well.
Yeah, I agree a lot. And it's the thing is, of course, how you listen to customers, and as a PM, you understand the strategy of the company, the product strategy of the company, for example, and you link these two things. And when you have this evidence of customer feedback, and you have this direction about the strategy, and link these two things, I believe that it's way more easier to go to a good path for the company.
One thing that Intuit does pretty well, and it's probably something that people can search, they have this, like, it started a long time ago, but we have this concept called follow me home. It's not creepy. It's like, it's just a term, an internal term that was done since the 80s, where it's called FMH internally. And everyone who joins Intuit needs to learn about that, needs to do a follow me home. It's really like a design thinking observation exercise, right? You go to where the customer is and you watch the customer go through a task with your product. And everyone, every levels, every roles have to go through that process. And this is something that we foster like internally pretty heavily at Intuit. We even we have this internal rewarding tool called Spotlight. It's a financial like spotlight, so we can give spotlights to our peers, our customers, and it really helps us do a lot of that. So I really feel Intuit does a great job of that. And you can search Follow Me Home Intuit on YouTube. There's a bunch of documentation there. It's pretty interesting and different than, I've never seen a company that's this focused on the customer. Maybe Amazon is a little bit more from what I read, but this is way more than my previous experiences.
Pretty nice. So we will have probably the second question should be popping up on your screen now for who are at home or at the office. And going on here, Damian, how do you capture and incorporate customer feedbacks in the process today? So you mentioned this Follow Me Home, but do you have some program like NPS or use support, or in your case, you work for internal teams? So how you do this with this kind of audience, and it's which kind of sources you use, and if it's different or is the same or of your previous experience at Adobe, for example?
No, it's very different. Different at BlackBerry, different at PayPal, different at Adobe, and now with Intuit, it's different and it's changing all the time, right? The company's trying a lot of different processes all the time. So last year, for example, when I joined at Intuit, we had annual goals, right? We wanted to make sure that we would know what we would do for the entire year. And this is also true for Adobe. For example, we had Adobe Max as our big like launch conference date in October. So all teams were pretty much set in the work in December, like almost a year before the launch, right? And we have all that time to execute on that. At Intuit, it was a little bit of that when I joined, but now the new process that they're trying is we want to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing for the next 2 months, but we don't know what we're going to do in month 3 or 4. And we have an idea where we want to go, but we are allowed to change direction based on customer feedback if needed. And we're trying that model now. And I really feel it will give us the opportunity to pivot and iterate and be a lot more reactive to customer feedback. And it's becoming almost like survival mode for companies today, right? If you're not serving your customers, it doesn't matter if it's a huge, full of features software, like you have to really serve your customers. I see tools, for example, Credit Karma, which is much simpler than QuickBooks, I would say, in terms of features and all that, but it has more users, right? So, and it brings more revenue to the company. So it's very interesting and very different. So it's always changing. What we're trying now is this 2-month cycle of knowing what to do for the next 2 months, and let's see what happens. But I think this is more exciting and good for PMs.
Very nice. And for you, Tom?
Yeah, so I'll split it into, again, sustaining product management versus new product development. Those are kind of the two sides of it. For sustaining product management, both Peloton and Jetson, the current company, we both had access to Zendesk, CSAT scores, NPS scores. I would say for Zendesk is probably one of the best tools, right? The way it works is you kind of call it tracks for you, and callers who have hardware issues will call into your customer support team. This Zendesk software will essentially monitor the tags that customer support is tagging hardware issues to. So definitely following a lot of those tags. The important part of that, by the way, is training and establishing a good bucketing system for hardware issues, because Zendesk is only as valuable as the way you set it up for your company. So we had issues at Peloton, like power issues. But power issues could mean multiple things. It could be loose connection. It could be the plug was like kind of falling out of the wall. And there's several different types of power issues. So if you can do a good job of bucketing those issues, then you can get more meaningful data right at your fingertips rather than digging into the calls and trying to pull out all of the details. So Zendesk was big. Things like I mentioned CSAT and NPS. You also have your Facebook user groups. You have your passionate users on there. You have your retail user reviews. Walmart.com, Target.com, things like that. People are talking about that. So you have all of those, and that exists in the last two product management positions I've held. The one thing about Peloton, I'll mention, because it had a much higher R&D budget, we, from a new product development standpoint, we had the budget to hire user research companies for us that would recruit super users. And for example, we'd line up 8 treadmills in a row, and we'd get marathon runners on these things to figure out where should the handrail placement be, how big should the screen be, how wide and long should the running deck be. So we definitely had a lot of third party paid research at our fingertips there, versus at Jetson we're kind of low hanging fruit. We have users that have registered, existing users that registered their product with us, so we can kind of reach out to them for surveys, and we've even done some half-hour user interviews to get the full use case.
Very nice. Damian, when Tom said talk about Zendesk, for example, for me it's a kind of gold mine, so we have a lot of information there that you can use to improve products, understand what is struggling the current user base, etc., etc. For internal teams, do you have something similar?
Not really. At Adobe, we had user voice, as I said, as a tool for us to track a lot of the feedback. We had, of course, customer support. There's a lot of bugs filed all the time, right? And we can go through them and answer. But there was not like a very a big aggregation of data that we could look at from a customer feedback standpoint. At Intuit, for the external teams, I know like a big platform that we have internally is called the Virtual Expert Platform. So one of the new businesses that's kind of very promising right now is this idea of live customer support as you go through your journey. And we're doing a lot of that. And of course, there's a lot of AI, a lot of bots, a lot of tracking. But because we serve internal teams, design and development teams, it's very hard to automate that kind of feedback, right? Like a bug can be very complex, could be very simple. It's hard to tag that kind of scenario. But we were always checking with our customers. We're going through the bugs. We're connecting our customers. We have, as I said, multiple follow me homes all the time. But it's different. We don't have something that well built yet.
Okay, it's more decentralized, and we have a lot of sources. Right. Nice. So we will have the third and the last question should be popping up in our screen now, and so you continue here with Tom. Just a moment, please. So Tom, one question that I have is how you combine qualitative feedback with quantitative feedback. I know that for software companies, it's way more easier to have quantitative data, but in your reality, so how do you use these two sources of data, qualitative and quantitative, and how do you combine these things to prioritize your roadmap?
Yeah, this was one of the more challenging questions for sure. My initial reaction was you kind of just combine it organically, but what I will say is that the analytics tend to win over the qualitative feedback. because a lot of the qualitative feedback tends to be negative. And what's actually funny is, when you get feedback, like qualitative feedback, like for Peloton, for example, the screen is so big, it's amazing, and then period, exclamation point. That's all they say. But on the other end, if you get somebody who doesn't like it, they say the screen size is way too big, but they don't stop there. They say, I don't like it because my treadmill faces out to the room, and I want to be able to see above the screen, and I want to, it's too much of an obstacle in front of me. So I've at least found that in my career that the negative feedback tends to be more specific, which honestly is perhaps a good thing. But I think at the end of the day, the bigger influence for our roadmap, combining qualitative and product analytics that guide the roadmap, for me, it really depends on where our business is. I mean, we are so successful. We are one of the leading market share manufacturers of e-bikes in retail. So we definitely want to take advantage of some of our weaker product categories that have some market. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Nice. And for you, Damon?
I think we need to separate again this idea of before product market fit and after product market fit. I think if it's research, if it's a lot of discovery, then qualitative always will win in terms of knowing exactly where the need is, how you can create some prototypes and then test the prototypes quickly, learn, and then iterate on them. It has to be qualitative, right? I wouldn't recommend testing a prototype at scale because you get a lot of the data, but the whys will probably not be there. But then if it's tracking growth or really seeing which areas to invest more, quantitative is better. And also to test options, right, in production. I would say if it's research and pre-market fit, pre-product market fit, qualitative always wins. And I'm a huge fan of qualitative research more than quantitative research. We do that all the time. We're talking with our customers all the time. And it's also based in the audience, right? So if we have different business units to serve. I always go first to the biggest audience where most of the developers are, most of the designers are, where the biggest revenue is. Then I spend time with 1 to 5 users there. You don't need to do more than 5 because a lot of the feedback tends to stabilize, right? It's going to be the same. You go from knowing nothing to knowing a lot with 5 users. And but it's my personal opinion. I'm a more of a innovator kind of PM, so I like to really go to the need instead of incremental improvements. For example, we created a product now for our system that did so well that we presented at the Figma conference in San Francisco, and it got a lot of other companies pinging us like Tesla, Google, AWS, even offering to pay for our service, for our tool. So that was amazing feedback, but always started with qualitative feedback.
Very nice. Yeah. I like one of definition that Mark Kagan have about product strategy as a sequence of product market fits. So you are always launching something and then testing this is now launching, for example, and for sure qualitative data can be used for these kind of things. And when you scale, usually starts to be hard to use qualitative data because you have a high volume of these things. It's difficult to process, etc., understand. And but I totally agree with you. And so, Damian, in your opinion, what are the main difficulties you face when trying to access and utilize this customer feedback to make decisions? So I should totally we already discussed it here, how to use this pre-product market fit, after product market fit, etc. But in nowadays, how do you use these customer feedbacks, and what's difficult you see using this kind of information?
I think the first thing is that that's super important that I learned kind of late in my career is that you got to be okay with not succeeding, right? Like I think PMs have this pressure of, oh, I hired a PM, so my product will do well, and that's so not true, right? And it's so hard to do well. I'm studying a lot. I have a side project that it's a startup, and it's so hard to find product market fit. I was looking at Y Combinator data. They get like thousands of applications every batch. Only 2% of them make the batch. And it's normally like 200 companies, and only 2% of the batch succeed. So it's like, it is a very hard thing to find product market fit. So I think that's the first mindset change that every PM has to adopt. Like, we're here to do our best to really get to product market fit, but it's hard, and you gotta iterate as much as possible. So you don't have to stress if you're not capturing everything, or if you're not making sense of everything. Making progress in learning is bigger than capturing everything, right? So what I do is, it's very different. Like, it's in Google Docs, and sometimes some sort of spreadsheet that we have internally. Again, at Adobe, we had user voice. It was never perfect, but just tracking something, and your customers will tell you qualitatively where the problems are and what the wrong moves are as you iterate. So I think making progress is more important than having a perfect process. And I don't have a perfect process. I use different tools, different ways of tracking that, prioritizing with some scores, but I would say prioritize the relationship with your customer more than anything. They will tell you what to do.
Nice. And Tom, for you, what's the main difficulties you're facing when you're trying to access this qualitative data and then utilize customer feedback to make decisions?
Yeah, my biggest hurdle to access customer feedback is, look, we have a relatively small user base. So we need to, we're kind of like a startup, right? We're like an 8-year-old company that's trying to get big. So you have limited existing users, and we're trying to grow in areas where we don't currently have a consumer segment at all. So we really need to get out there. And I mentioned, kind of like getting when we were talking about user-centric company culture. User committees, I think is such an important piece of it. So, it could be as simple as going to a New York Auto Show, which has a segment, a small section for like micro mobility, and seeing, potential customers there, just talking to them and almost like you're recruiting them to say, hey, would you like to talk with us in a month from now, or would you like to use a product of ours? So it's for accessing. My biggest hurdle is finding the customer for a category that we're not existing, that we're not playing in right now. When it comes to using customer feedback to make decisions, I kind of thought of three main ones. Bucketing the feedback. I mentioned the Zendesk example earlier. Especially in a sustaining product environment, bucketing that feedback is very important. But for new product development, like when you're kind of taking a lot of qualitative, data in, vague feedback is a hurdle, because you're trying to get down to the root cause, and so that's why user interviews are so important. You unfortunately just can't get that so much just by reading a user review, because they're all fixed. They're fixated on one item. Perhaps if you get enough user reviews, you can kind of build this persona. But vague feedback is tough. And then my biggest one is conflicting feedback. How many times I've had a debate with engineers or industrial designers on whether a handbrake or an electric brake is better, right? Handbrakes are the ones that you squeeze, and they're like just like any other bike that you grew up with. But nowadays, we have electric brakes, which are capable of regenerative battery. You can add 10% or so to your battery by using an electric brake. There's different feels to it. There's different familiarities, and it seems to be 50-50. So trying to figure out, like almost like to Damien's success rate point, you're not going to satisfy everybody. So it's definitely thinking about the trade-offs and what you think, what your gut tells you.
Nice. And usually, how much time your team today invest and understand these feedbacks, passing through all these sources and try to analyze this and extract value? So do you have idea how much time this usually was expended by your team?
I would say, again, sustaining new product and future like roadmap development, right? Those are the three branches for product. Almost like Scrooge from the Christmas Carol, right? You have the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. It's you're constantly being haunted by all three. But from a sustaining product standpoint, I would say a half hour a day on average, monitoring feedback. Once you have the themes of what you want to tackle, you're sort of off and running with the engineering teams, getting to the root cause and getting solutions. That half hour a day is really just monitoring for something new, because you really do have in the beginning, you kind of already have that data and you're prioritizing what you want to tackle first. So just monitoring, for new things happening. For new product development, I would say probably an hour a day, especially in the discovery and concept phases where you're trying to put the product together. You're trying to figure out what it's going to look like. So you have all of the freedom to incorporate user feedback in how you shape the product requirements document, how you communicate to your cross-functional team the vision of what you're trying to do. And then once you kind of lock in, let's say you purchase tooling and you make a $500,000 investment, then you're certainly still monitoring for what's going on in from the competitive standpoint or what people are saying, but your time is more wisely spent now, like following through with that product and launching it.
Nice. And for you, Damon?
Yeah, no, I think it varies from company to company, right? At Adobe, I used to spend a lot of my time, because we had those very hard deadlines in October. I was like, everything had to be ready by July, right? So I would have like just a couple months for fixes and stuff. So that was my time as a PM was, yes, I spent time with customers, but a lot of my time, probably 80% of my time was focused on execution, right? Really working with engineering teams, making sure everything was working and we're going to get to the deadline, being more of a program manager more than a PM. Of course, I had that PM big hat of like customer feedback in the beginning of the process. And as we iterated at Intuit, things are much different. I have like PMs are more allowed to spend more time with customers. So I'd say that 60, maybe even 70% of my time is with customers. And I provide guidance with our engineering and design teams. I'm part of all the stand-ups and everything, but I don't manage execution. I'm allowed as a PM to be more with the customer. And I think this is such a big blessing. And we're not going to ship if it's not ready, different than the other hard dates that we had. So that's a different way of doing it. I feel like we're doing more things right with this model, even if it can get slower, because we're really super close to the customer, checking with the customer all the time, right? And really validating every step and also invalidating every step with customers. So now I would say 60 is a good number. 60% of my time is spent with customers at Intuit.
Pretty nice. Thank you, you two. You back to the slides right now. Rafa, help me, please. But before we open for the audience questions, I can see that we have some here already from Nick and Cordiali. I want to invite everyone to join our waitlist. Just wait for have a share the screen. And it's here. I want to invite everyone to join our waitlist for the Birdie's new platform that's coming out in mid-September probably, to a selected group of beta testers. Our new product was created to help product teams with challenge of centralize, classify, analyze, and collaborate over customer feedback to make better product decisions. So lots to do with everything we're discussing here today. If sounds interesting to you, it's just to enter in the link bit.ly/bird dash waitlist and fill out the form. Going to the Q&A questions that we have here. So you have Nick asking, how do you deal when hardware does not support the product you are managing? For example, bicycle brakes not strong enough for e-bike cargo use, or phone hardware not supporting a certain software feature desire. So could you start, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, for that specific example, you would want to iron out those details early on in some testing, right? So for our hardware development process, right, we kind of go from discovery phase, we're building the business case. Concept phase, you're figuring out what it looks like. Alpha phase is where your engineers are trying to make what the industrial designers want it to look like happen. And throughout that, you're as early as the alpha phase, I would say, you are testing for those sorts of scenarios. Because you obviously don't want to commit to expensive tooling if you think that you can't achieve what the product is supposed to do. So you hopefully catch those challenges early and get validation before it's too late. I hope that answers the question.
Nice. Do you have something to add here, Damian?
Not really in terms of like hardware, right? But sometimes software, depending on the product you're building, you have to deal with so much uncertainty as well, like especially with different tech stacks. If like when I worked at Adobe, we were building a new design tool, there was so many technical challenges there. I think the beauty of PMing is really that you will make progress and you try things even if it's not done before for the user, right? So we made things work based on the customer needs. So I think that push is always beneficial.
Nice. The next question is how do you intend to leverage things like metaverse to help you, your customers to experience concepts before they can be transformed in products? Damian, if you have some thoughts about this.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical about the metaverse. I'm a real, like, I know maybe you'll get to a place where things will be so real that you don't feel the difference with haptic feedback and all that. But I don't think it's a very, this is personal, right? It has nothing to do with my company or work or anything. Like, I really feel like it can be bad for well-being, for our health, for like even like being outside under the sun gives you vitamins and good things for your life as a human being, right? So I'm not a very big fan of that world. And also, like, I'm super scared that I have 2 kids and that's kind of their future to deal with. And I don't think it's there yet, but it's, again, super promising. A lot of companies investing a lot of energy there. Personally, I prefer real life.
Nice, Tom.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a good question. I never really put much thought into. The first thing that came to my mind was, the metaverse would be a great like advertising platform. But at the end of the day, I'm in the e-bike and e-scooter business. My job is to get people outside and enjoy the weather. But yeah, I'm against the metaverse as well.
Nice. Another one here is basic question these days. Have COVID impacted the way your team works, especially how you keep in touch with customers in a socially distancing world? We will take any learnings or new habits from these days. Tom?
Yeah, I think that it definitely impacted hardware because, you know, you have to touch the product, you have to build it, and it takes multiple people a lot of times to build things. So that made it extremely difficult. You know, we made it happen, but we also, you know, we unfortunately had to meet in a room, and you know, we put masks on and get together and build things. That has calmed down a lot recently, so I'm happy to say that. But I remember, I personally, like, I have an F-150 truck. I went to our warehouse, I took a treadmill and I put it on the truck, and I brought it back to my basement because I needed it for work. I just had to, like, you know, if there were issues with hardware from customers, I had to see it for myself and try to see if I could recreate the issue.
Nice. Daniel?
Yeah, same thing here. Everything is digital now. Like, all the research, all the meetings are, I would say 99% virtual. Now all the follow me homes are virtual. Even going to the office now, we only have to go twice a week. So today's like, all the offices, all the big offices are pretty empty. It's sad in a way. It's good to be, like, when we go there, we had like a big offsite recently, and it's amazing to be with everyone in one room. You feel like that exchange in personalities and like face-to-face conversations are so much better. But the reality is that's nearly impossible now. But hopefully it changes soon.
Nice. The last one that we have here is, can you share a case study, briefly, of course, where customer feedback was critical for a new product or adjustment in a current product? Damien, if you could start.
Yeah, I think one thing that when I joined Intuit, I got the design system team. I got customers not using our components, mainly because they had different tech stacks. They had a lot of different ways of building a very specific business unit, like business cases that were not very global. So instead of continuing to build components that were not being used a lot, my learnings, as soon as I joined, I did like 2 months of customer research. I wrote a big, like, recommendations doc and wrote some hypotheses. Was, let's serve them instead of give them things, right? So by doing that, we're able to give them what they needed contextually in their work. So we created a plugin for Figma. We created a plugin for VS Code. So now with one click, our developers can, let's say they need an icon. With one click with this extension, they can get the icon added to the React project, the import statement gets added, and it runs the package installation with one click. So again, we're serving them more than giving them that component that they were not using. So that shift only happened because of customer feedback.
Nice. Tom?
For a specific use case for me, I'll take it back to my days in Leviton, which was making receptacles and still is making receptacles and floor boxes. So we're getting into a new category with floor boxes. We've never really had a product that brings power to the floor. So, and it's obviously common in commercial buildings. But we essentially studied, you know, user feedback, both digitally and in person. We recruited an electrician actually to say, hey, here's a floor, we want to bring power to it, how would you do it? And we watched him, and he kind of matched what we saw digitally. When it comes to bringing power to a floor, what it requires is drilling a hole into concrete if the floor is made of concrete, right, for example, and you're putting this unit in so that you can wire it from the ceiling of the level below you. And a lot of times the floor wasn't level, so when you're putting this cylindrical thing on, it doesn't kind of fit flatly onto the surface, and it could be a tripping hazard. So we were able to, think of ways to make this like a self-leveling floor box unit. And so that's just a good example, I guess. And it's I probably need a visual, to be honest, now that I'm saying it more, but that is a direct kind of use case where we took feedback from an installer and we made a product that essentially was much easier to install with specific features that address those problems.
Nice. We receive a last minute question here. It's how do you track competitors? It's from Bruce. In addition to your company innovations, your competitors are also developing features that might be easy adds to help your offering better serve to customer needs. If you discover them quickly, your next product or release may be able to improve. So how do you track competitors today?
So the one thing I'll say about the competition, you definitely want to be aware of what your product is going to be compared to. But if it's one thing I learned at Peloton, it's that you don't necessarily focus on the competitor, what the competitor is doing. You absolutely focus on bringing the best possible experience to your user. I never had that mentality going into Peloton because my first company with Leviton, they've been in the electrical industry for 120 years. It was a privately owned company. We were absolutely like what do they have? We want to make sure that we have the same thing or something similar. And the growth of the company reflected that, right? It was probably 2 to 5% growth every year, which is, great for a 120-year-old company that's established. But for a company like Peloton that's trying to grow 100%, year over year or something, that stretch goal like that, you are absolutely focused on the user in this situation. And that really hit me when I joined the company. I was like, what do you mean you're not worried about what Nordic Track is doing? It's like, nope, you stay focused on what would the best possible treadmill look like, and you make it happen, and don't even worry about what the competition's doing.
Nice. Damian?
Yeah, same thing. I really feel PMs are scientists, right? Trying to test hypotheses. So if you're testing our hypothesis, you got to stay focused, right? If you keep looking at other scientists doing their own hypotheses, you can get distracted, and that can be very bad. Of course, it's good to be aware of what's going on, but yeah, stay focused as a scientist and try to learn as much as possible.
Nice. Tom and Damian, once again, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your experience. It was really great, and I learned a lot from you. And for you that are listening and watching us, I hope this time was also valuable to you. And thank you again, and have a great week. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.